So I'm going to record this lesson. Today is going to be over, or this week and next week, Azure. And some of the security we can do in the cloud, not necessarily just Azure by itself, but deploying out a Linux machine and securing it down while it's running in the cloud. Things we can't do with virtual machines here on campus is see some of the botnet attacks coming in, because we do have several different firewalls, at least 2 different firewalls before the internet would be hitting this classroom. So if we're going to pull out something out into the cloud that's got the internet directly on it, we can see some a little bit more interesting logs and stuff. So let's create an Azure account, but this will be an Azure student account. So you need to use Google. 23-year-old Google Corporation, Azure student account. And there's definitely difference between the Azure free account and the Azure student account. And if you just go to their sites, you'll just fall down the little hole for the free account, not the student account. So once you locate the Azure for Students, go ahead and click on it. So try Azure for Students free today, $100 credit. It says a $200 credit, you've got the wrong free account. So you'll just start for free and use your student email. You have to use your asub.edu email. So they'll have to detect that you're a university student and go and create your account. You have to put in a phone number for extra verification. I should text you. What is Azure? It's Azure is Microsoft's cloud computing offering. You have Google Cloud, and probably your biggest one out there is AWS, Amazon Web Services. They're cloud-based. Before they were around, Rackspace used to be a really big one. They're still kind of big out there. You could rent actual physical servers and stuff back in the day. We want you to provide feedback for your sign up, really. You can just submit. You don't have to submit anything, but welcome to the Education Hub. So you kind of have a dashboard. So yeah, and got access to some software, live stuff. We're going to be wanting to click on the, I guess, the overview or click on home at the very top left. Okay, and that's what we needed to do. Once you get into the portal, click on home and you should see a screen like this. everybody good? Looks like it. So this here is the Azure Portal. You do have some things here like, we'll also create a Google portal in, well, that's LAN class, but you have some PowerShell and Bash up here. We've got a bunch of offerings and services that you can add. Some of these do require money, but you do have that $100 credit that you can do. Well, what we're going to deploy out, we're going to deploy out a free Linux virtual machine and secure it down. So before you click on anything, let me show you the canvas week 7. So Azure Security, you create a free Azure student account. That's worth 10 points. So y'all just got 10 points. Cool. And you're going to deploy a free Azure Linux virtual machine. That's 10 points. So that's the next part. That one's a little bit complicated, so I will walk you through that. Some of the other parts down here, SSH with fail to ban, Nginx server, some of these other, I'm going to let you kind of jump out and just see if you can research and get that fixed before going over it. But I've posted some resources down here. A reminder how to update CentOS after it's installed. It's one of the first things you should always do when you install an operating system is update it. Microsoft does not patch their offerings. So let's go look at this second one right here. Deploy the free Azure Linux VM. Okay, they make it hard to find the free Azure Linux VM. And there's an arrow pointing to the right that says more services at the very top bar of buttons. Does everybody locate that? And that's what you click on under more services. Now that you got the more services launched, if you look at the bottom center of the screen, there's a section called free offerings at the bottom center. I told you it's hard to find. You instinctively want to go create a virtual machine, but those all will eat away at your $100 credit. So you have to find this very carefully. So scroll down a little bit and there's a link right underneath the free offerings that you can click on. So once you click on that, you now come to this whole section here is free offerings. Now you only see the Linux virtual machine as the second one. So look at it. They're only going to give you 750 hours a month. I was kind of worried about running out of hours when I first got this, so I was shutting my virtual machine off if I wasn't using it. And then I decided, how many days is 750 hours? And it's like 35 days or something like that. So I was thinking, wait a second. The longest month of the year is 31, and they're giving me like 35 days worth of hours a month. Yeah, I don't ever have to shut it down. So you get this free for 12 months. Services that are included for free with the Azure Student account, you can always use into limits listed below without getting charged. So this is not going to eat into your $100, which is good. I don't want to do anything that eats into your $100 because you may want to use that just to play with your own research somewhere. You can eat $100 up pretty quick though, if you're not careful. Okay, just click on the create. So here we can create your subscription should be listed as Azure for Student. And there's a little asterisk here beside resource group. There is no existing resource group to choose from the dropdown because this is brand new. So you got to create a resource group. So go ahead and click on create new. We'll give it a name. Just do Linux class project. You can use underscores, but you can't use spaces. So either Linux class project with no space or use underscores. Once that's created, we come down, the virtual machine name. That's required. It'll also have the same issues. So you could just put your last name. And then maybe underscore Linux. Letters, numbers, dots and dashes. That'll work. Last name with Linux at the end of it. Just use uppercases so you can see the difference. The region down here. Where are we located?
US Central.
We're in the central part of the US. So it would probably, actually you choose the location that your customers that are going to use the server are closest to. And if you're consulting, you might get people from who knows where. You want to pick the location, the data center is closest to the customer. The image type, go and hit the drop down on it. And there's a scroll up. So we have our CentOS base 7.3 Gen 1. We'll go ahead and pick on that since we took operating systems class and we used CentOS 7 in operating systems class. We'll stick with that distribution just so you're a little bit more comfortable with it. And the sizing is already pre-selected for you. And this is the B1 that they are not going to charge you $9.13 a month. This should be free because we clicked our free offering. So you don't want to modify that any. The administrator accounts. So this is something Azure is going to do. You could use a password, but what's the problem with password login? We studied this in security class. What's the problem with just username, password login? Be cracked, single factor. That's bad. So the default is an SSH public key. So they're going to use asymmetric encryption. And I believe that is what chapter 7 is all about, is asymmetric encryption. What this part's going to do, there's going to be a private key and a public key. The private key is going to be stored inside of our Linux installation and kept secure. The public key is what we're going to get, and it'll be a key that you can put on a thumb drive and carry it with you. And they'll have an option to password protect this SSH public key, which you should. So when you password protect it, it'll become a multi-factor. You'll have to have the key, and then you also have to have the password. So you have two different factors there to log into the system. You will also have to have the username. So it's kind of course, username and your password is one factor. That's something you know. The key here, the key file, is something you're going to have. So the username is Azure user. You may want to make notes of this. Is write down Azure user. So that'll be the login into the Linux system if you want to SSH into it. You're generating a new key pair. Hit the drop down on the generate new key pair, see what options are there. Yep, hit that drop down. You can use an existing key stored in Azure. You can use an existing public key. So now we're going to generate a new key pair. You did have the option of launching a console window and generating a key pair in a console window and then using that. That was the old way of doing the authentication, but Microsoft has automated this a little bit. The thing with generating your own key pair, you can specify the key link. This here is just going to be an automatic key link generation. I would think 2048-bit linked key. So we also have a key pair name. It's going to be Austin Linux key. So we go ahead and scroll down and port rules. Selected ports, port 22. Now I want you to go ahead and let's look at this assignment a little bit. Don't have a document. You can easily do that right here, or you can do that part later. Actually, probably want to open port 80 and 443 after you're into the system. That way, you know how to make changes to the firewall. If you do it right now, it's scripted and done, and you won't know how to go in and hunt around and make changes in the future. So let's just leave port 22 for right now, because we don't have port 80 and 443 secured at this moment. So let's just leave port 22, and that'll give you some more things to do. So what's at the very bottom? I can't see your very bottom.
It says review and create or next tags.
I don't think we need to go and click next. So we could add some tags just to give some names to it, but we don't need. So go next again. If you are deploying out thousands of machines into the cloud, you might need to tag them with like, what is the machine doing? You may have database machines, web servers, you may have some analytic machines for doing math calculations. You're feeding in images of the pictures taken from telescopes, and they're running analytics to find new planets or asteroids and things. So yeah, tag different stuff. You know, set SSH port open to the internet. This only is recommended for testing. If you want to change this setting, go back to basics tab. We want that to be open. In reality, what you'd want to do is once you deployed out a machine, you go into your Azure network and you, instead of opening port 22 to the internet, you set up a VPN area where you have to VPN into the Azure cloud, into your custom IP subnet range. And then once you're VP'd in, then you could use Putty and stuff and hit your virtual machines through that. But we want to go ahead and leave this open to the internet and look at what botnets do if ports are open on the wild internet. Go ahead and click create. At this point, the key pair has been generated. We want to download the private key. So now we have downloaded the key. It should be in your downloads folder. We'll want to protect this key at all costs. So the machine is being deployed. And at this time, we need to get the key to where we can use it in Putty and some other tools. The format that it comes in doesn't work with Putty authentication. So we need to convert it into a form that Putty is going to understand. To do that, you need to have the full installation of the Putty onto your system, which we do. I used Ninite and made sure Putty and WinSCP and some of these remote tools are already installed into the system. But if not, you don't want just a standalone Putty executable. You want the full Putty MSI installer that includes other tools. One of the tools that we needed to convert this key is a key gen. So go ahead and click down in your magnifying glass in your search bar and start typing in, spin a little bit, type in Putty, the Putty gen app. So this is a key generator. And we're going to load an existing private key. And hit the little drop down over there to the where it says Putty private key files, PK, far right over there by the open. Let's see if they have a Pim. Go to all files. Yep, and click the Pim. Successfully imported the foreign key. Everybody see that? Bring this up so it's a little bit easier. So we had to load the file. Let's give this a passphrase. So this is where it's going to be how to secure your key file down from intruders taking and using it. So go ahead and add a password. Remember what password you're using though, and you'll have to confirm it. Could be as simple as pass1234 for lab purposes, although that could be easily probably cracked. Once that's done, you want to save the private key. I think it was private key. So the save file type, go ahead and leave the save file type as the original PBK. And you can give it a file name like Austin Linux key or something like that. And click save. Click on the conversions at the top. I just want to see what's under conversions. Don't think we had to convert it. If you look under the keys over here, it See all the different versions? We talked about elliptic curve. Those would be the last two down at the bottom for elliptic curve. And that's what's recommended for quantum computing resistant keys. And the problem is Azure, as of a couple of months ago, still had not migrated over to support elliptic curve. So I wanted to play with the elliptic curve. It's just the Azure logins and stuff, they do not support that. Way to go, Microsoft. When are you going to upgrade? Microsoft's not known for bleeding edge security and staying up with everything. Let's go ahead and close out the Putty key generator. And go to resource. Cool. So we have it deployed out. We need to be able to access it though. To access it, you see where it says public IP address? Go ahead and click on that. It's hyperlinked. What can you do with this public IP address?
Make it static.
You can make it static. It's free. And once you click static, you have to click save. Click refresh up there. It said we may have to restart the. Okay, I think that looks good. Go and click on Austin Linux again at the top. Something else you want to do? Nah, I'll make y'all do that later. I'm gonna make y'all click around and do some reading and research. We need to try and log in to the Linux machine now. So that public IP address up there, you can notice there's a couple of pieces of paper. You can copy that to clipboard. Now you can launch the actual Putty program. So just type Putty, and everybody sees Putty, right? You can paste that IP address into the hostname field. On the left side, we have connection information, and then there's SSH that's got a plus beside it. You see it? Yep. Go and expand that out. And then there's some authentication. Click on authentication. And if we look in here, there's a private key file for authentication. We didn't set it up for password authentication, which is the default. So this requires extra work to have a key to work. So you'll have to browse, and you'll have to go find that key that you saved. And just click on it, and that will now be. Now at this point, I would go back to the top, and I'd click session. And I'd probably, if I was you, I would want to type in a name there in the save sessions box and click save. Probably like Austin Linux or something like that. and then click save. So that's going to save the IP address, and it's also going to save the path to your key file. So now I can just click open. The server host key is not cached. Do you want to? This is the first time that we've ever communicated with this machine, and we know we want to communicate with it. So this warning is an okay warning. Now, after we cache it and we see this again in the future, why? What happened? Is there a man in the middle going on? It's normally a man in the middle issue, or you've reinstalled the OS or something. Something's fishy if this ever shows up again on an existing machine that you have it cached. So go ahead and hit yes, because this is expected for the first time. Yes. We went back to the top and clicked on sessions and saved it. We gave it a name and then click save. So you need to put in Azure user as the login. You remember yeah. So type Azure user and hit enter. And then the passphrase for the key file. And your drops to command prompts. So username needed to be known, the password to the key file needed to be known. And that Pim key, you really need what I would probably do, let me show you what I'd do for that Pim key. Go and open it back up. So open up File Explorer. Go to your downloads folder. So that one that you downloaded from Azure, that PEM file, right click on it. No, you're not on the file. There you go. You see 7-zip? Go ahead and go to 7-zip and tell it to add to archive. You see over there where it has encryption on the right side? And you can enter a password. Even though that's under your accounts and in your downloads folder, I would still, well, of course, I'd probably put it somewhere other than downloads. I'd put this on probably OneDrive or something like that, but I would encrypt this with a strong password. Again, pass 1, 2, 3, 4 for lab purposes, but.
You want to encrypt the file name?
Yep, and then the AES, hit the drop down there beside AES. No, don't encrypt the file name. Is that the only encryption? Yeah, so that's the only encryption available, which is good encryption. AES is good. So hit OK. Now I'd delete that original file up there. So we can see the file name, but you have to enter a password to extract it. So if you ever need it again, you'd need to know the password to extract. So that's how that I would secure that system down. What I might have is those located somewhere on a server and then in another location, maybe even under another administrator account, have an Excel spreadsheet with keys that were generated off the GRC website. Those perfect 63 character passwords, perfect passwords. I probably would have used that to encrypt these files with. And then that way I'd have to log in as another user account, log into another file, possibly password protected, to get one of those 63. They do that here on campus. They have them separated out. So if you were to access anything like this, you would have to find, well, okay, well, which other user account, whether they have that 63 character password hidden. It can be done. You just put a lot of lot of layers in the way. And anybody remotely trying to crack into the server, I mean, they're not going to have access to any of that. One thing, they'd have to know what the 2048-bit key is. What kind of key combination can you make out of 2048 bits? Remember, IPv6 is only 128 bits long. Okay. Well, this part of the video is, I'm going to put on YouTube, but everything before this part would be pretty important probably to keep a link to and a refresh. There's a lot in there, how to have key authentication login, how to protect the keys, and then how to deploy out at least a free. You only get one free Linux and I think one free Windows. So if you create a second one, even if you go through the free part, they'll start charging you. You can't have two free Linux, only one at a time running in their cloud. I know, found that out the hard way. I tried to create one for one class and create one for a second class, and it started eating away my $100. Well, okay. At $9 a month, you know, you got 10 months access and it's been gone. So, well, the first thing you want to do is update. So if you notice, you're not in as root, you're in as a regular user. So go ahead and run sudo sudo. Did I have that here? Yep. Sudo yum update. You shouldn't be asked any password login because the key file, this is another benefit of having a key file. You just run sudo. Normally it asks you for your password, but we've already opened the key file. Putty has the key file ready. Anytime it's asked for, it'll supply that. So yes, you want to upgrade. They got pretty fast internet. It's 19 megabytes a second, not megabits a second, 19 megabytes a second. That's rolling. 100 megabits connection can transfer about 12 megabytes a second. So that's definitely over 100 megabyte a second connection. It's nearly double. It's for at least 200 megabits a second. Just like my cheap fiber optic I have at my house now.
Oh.
So this is hardening the Linux system. It's already a little bit pre-hardened because it requires a certificate key to authenticate instead of usernames and passwords. This should upgrade to CentOS 7.8, 7.9 or something like that. I'm not sure what the latest version is. But as you've seen, Microsoft was deploying a 7.3 version of CentOS. There's a lot of exploits into that. It could even be an exploit for OpenSSH, so that's why you want to do this fairly quickly. Botnets will randomly scan, especially the Azure cloud, if they know somebody throws out a Linux machine that has some bugs in it. They're like, yeah, we constantly scan all of these blocks of addresses that Microsoft has. Anytime somebody throws a new one, maybe we can catch it before they can patch it and break in. If they can break in, then they can add some malicious code persistent into the system. So after you do patch it, it's still in the system connecting back to the attackers and who knows where. So this is cloud computing. You've successfully created a cloud Portal Azure account. You deployed out a machine that's running probably in the St. Louis area, maybe. Can't remember exactly where their data center is. I think it's up around St. Missouri area. And that system's running completely remote. After it installs everything, you'll of course want to do a reboot because it'll come up with the new kernel. You'll have to do sudo in front of every command because you're not root. You can switch over to complete root, but it's not recommended because then anything you're launching is running as full root. So remember me talking to you about if you log in as a root account, any process you're running, web browsers or any type of utility, it's running as root. And if there's an exploit that somebody can hit from remote, they get in as root access. So the sudo is the temporary elevate. The root account does not have a password, so you can't log in as root directly, which is another cool benefit. Somebody can't sit there and slam any open ports with the root and random passwords and log in because root doesn't have a password. They'd never be allowed in. A lot of cool security with that. But what I'm about to turn you off to do on your own for the last hour is I'm hoping today you can get step 3 finished. So fail to ban, and there's a web page here. Make sure this link is still valid. How to install fail to ban on CentOS 7. So this here has a pretty good run through. And as you run through all of this, make sure you do a lot of ls to look to see if the directories and files are still in the same place. To see if you can follow something like this. It can get a little complicated in a few places, but one of the things that can be different is the path where that logs are being kept. So what I'm saying here, when you get to this point, like log path, this here is a tool, fail to ban is a tool that monitors for malicious brute force attacks into the system. It can be set up, and looking right here, max retry 5, ban time 600. So that's in minutes, that's 10 minutes. If somebody tries to log in 5 times in 10 minutes, set a firewall and block them. And then the log path, what should this tool look at? Where do the failed login attempts get logged at? So you may have to examine, see if it's under secure or if it's under messages. You'll have to hunt around on your CentOS machine and figure out which log file that authentication attempts get sent to. This may not be a perfect walkthrough. You may have to Google and see if there's a slightly different walkthrough. So this one was from 2018, January 31st. Because we've run sudo yum update and we've upgraded to the latest version of CentOS, some things may have been moved around just a little bit. So use your Googling skills. If you have any trouble following these, do some troubleshooting. even some reading how to use fail2ban. So I'm going to stop the video for today. That's your task. How resourceful can you get? And you'll likely need to actually look at maybe the fail2ban website and look at all the different tools that come with that tool once it's installed and how to use them and how to troubleshoot.